The Green Party federally remains on the defensive today, one day after clarifying its policy on reopening the debate on abortion. The Greens said yesterday anyone who thinks the abortion debate should be reopened is not allowed to run for the party. But CBC News has learned of two candidates who've made anti-abortion comments in the past. John Paul Tasker joins us with more. Hey, JP.
Hey,
so what have we learned? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, another day, another story about abortion in the Green Party. Today, two candidates are having to answer for some anti-abortion comments that they made in the past. We have reviewed some social media posts that they made. Some date back to 10 years ago, but some are more recent and also include some questionnaire answers that were given to a group called the Campaign Life Coalition. Of course, that's an organization that advocates for social conservative policies in this country. Let's take a look at Mark Vicouterin, who is the candidate in Chatham in southwestern Ontario. He was perhaps the most direct in his opinions on abortion. He said that he would not support abortion in any circumstances for women, even if the health of the mother is in danger. He told the Campaign Life Coalition that he will support legislation that will give healthcare workers the right to opt out of procedures, giving these procedures to women. He also said that he believes that the life of a child starts at fertilization. He also made some commentary on euthanasia and also some gay rights. Another Green candidate, this time in the Quebec City area. Her name is Macarena Diab. She had some posts on Facebook kind of lamenting the availability of abortion in this country, saying she didn't like how available it was in our society. She also posted a quote from Mother Teresa, of course, the famous Roman Catholic nun, where she quoted abortion as the greatest destroyer of peace on earth. So we asked the Green Party about these comments, again, some of them dating back some years' time. They say that the candidates here do not remember saying any of these things about abortion, that they are now pro-choice. But I should point out, in the case of Mark Vicouterin, he gave these answers only last year in a 2018 survey ahead of the provincial campaign in Ontario.
And we should say to our viewers tuning in now, the reason that this is significant, Elizabeth May, in an interview with us earlier that was taped last week but aired yesterday, articulated that she was for the right for women to choose. She advocated that as her personal view, but if there were to be backbench Green MPs, they would be free to bring forward legislation on it. And there was some blowback to those comments. Later on, the Green Party issued a statement, and I want to read part of it because this is why those two candidates are so interesting. Although the leader does not have the power to whip votes, the statement reads, all Green Party members of Parliament must endorse the Green Party's values, including a firm support of a woman's right to choose. There is zero chance an elected representative of our party will ever reopen the abortion debate. It goes on to say this is because during our candidate vetting process, we ensure that all candidates wholeheartedly agree that the abortion debate is closed in Canada. Any who disagree are not allowed to run.
Not allowed to run. So pretty unequivocal that if you hold these anti-abortion positions, you're not welcome in the Green Party fold. Of course, these candidates in their past are now raising questions about that statement yesterday, but I really want to play for you a clip from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. He was asked today about Elizabeth May and his position and her position on abortion. Take a look.
Well, I think people should know where everyone stands, what their values are. I can make it really clear. I am very much pro-choice. We have to support women's right to choose. All my candidates have to be. There's no question about it. There's no debate allowed in my party. As leader, that's something very clear about where I stand on this position.
No debate allowed in his party. And of course, let's point out that Justin Trudeau has also made a similar commitment that all Liberal candidates in this election will be in favor or will be pro-choice when it comes to abortion. Andrew Scheer, of course, is less clear. He has said that he will allow backbench MPs to bring forth private members' bills if they so choose. But as leader, as Prime Minister, he would stand against any attempt to roll back the rights of women to have an abortion.
And I should mention that we did request an interview with Elizabeth May or a designate on this subject, and no one was available. Thanks, JP.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Ashley.
the update. CBC's John Paul Tasker.
Well, I think people should know where everyone stands, what their values are. I can make it really clear. I am very much pro-choice. We have to support women's right to choose. All my candidates have to be. There's no question about it. There's no debate allowed in my party. As leader, that's something very clear about where I stand on this position. And I also want to make it clear that, Mr. Trudeau often talks about being a feminist and being pro-choice, but it's not enough to just talk about it. We need to make sure that everyone has access to services. And right now in Canada, there's far too many women who do not have access to safe, legal abortions, and we need to make sure that service and that access to that service is accessible for everyone.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh took shots at two of his rivals today, the obvious one at Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and the other was directed at Elizabeth May's Green Party. Confusion over the Green stance on abortion and the vetting of its candidates is not really much clearer today. Leader Elizabeth May told Power in Politics she does not have the power to whip party members or prevent them from putting forward anti-abortion bills or motions, but the party later stated their policy was, quote, "During our candidate vetting process, we ensure that all candidates wholeheartedly agree that the abortion debate is closed in Canada. Any who disagree are not allowed to run." Now, the CBC has learned that at least two candidates have previously posted anti-abortion views online. When asked, the Green Party said neither candidate, quote, remembers having made those posts. It also confirmed both would still be running under the Green banner in this election. We're back with the Power panel to talk about all this. Tiffany Gooch, Stockwell Day, Françoise Boivin, and Evan Dyer. Tiffany, do you think the Green Party needs to do something additionally to clarify this, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think this is definitely part of the growing pains of growing into a sort of a nationally focused campaign rather than what's normally taken place for the Greens, which was more focused and targeted on the areas they thought they were going to win. And so when you're looking at all of what takes place in the vetting process for candidates and like looking back fully at what they've said in the past, they definitely have shown that capacity has been an issue for their ability to do that. And I think I don't remember is usually not the best answer in these cases. And at minimum, if they're going to keep these candidates, they should be able to. And I think this is true for all of those who have had sort of past statements that have been as serious as I think some of these are, that they can show and display the ways within which their opinion changed and how that happened, and not just be able to say I won't necessarily roll back our rights, but be able to talk about the ways within which they'll defend them and look for ways to strengthen regional access. And so I think at this point, they need to get a little bit more clear on what that would look like moving forward.
It's interesting, Françoise, because when Elizabeth May first offered the comments, when I had asked her about her party's stance and her own personal views, she was actually very clear. And she said, here are my personal views. I believe very much so in a woman's right to choose. However, the party policy is that, backbench, I'm not going to stifle backbench MPs. I don't have the power to do so. I don't have the power to whip votes. And then she went on to say that's good for democracy, right? Because she was unequivocal in her belief in that policy.
Exactly.
A few hours later, the Green Party's comments were very different.
And for me, there's two stories in that story. There's actually the question of where do they stand on it, because I'm still not clear. She had ample time with the questions you were asking. I was watching the interview and I'm like, my goodness, I was analyzing what Elizabeth May was saying, and I'm thinking to myself, what is the difference between that view and what Andrew Scheer is doing, in all fairness? So I was trying to decode that. Then I heard about the communiqué de presse that the Green Party had out. And for me, that's the second question. Other than the question of abortion, it's... does Elizabeth May understand her role? Does the Green Party have one set of rules for the leader? Is there something around this that is not very clear? I think she will have some explaining to do on that front. And the news story with the two candidates, I understand the question of vetting, having been with the NDP and seeing so many campaigns derail because of one candidate. That's the nightmare for any leader, that at some point in time, and believe you me, there's people working very hard right now to make sure their candidates are okay. But there's also people working very hard to make sure that somebody is not okay, and just to derail some campaign. So these people might have written, when they say they don't remember, makes me a bit, it makes me laugh, because in places like BC, you were talking about the battleground and the image of a Green as a Conservatives on bicycle. You have to understand that a lot of the Greens in BC are at the heart Conservatives. They're Green because environment for them is important, but at the heart, they're hardcore conservative, and they will go to areas where it is Conservatives right now that are in the lead over there, and they'll convince people at the door and say, hey, I'm going to push for the abortion and so on. They'll feel free to do so at the door. Or will they? We're not sure, based on that imbroglio that started yesterday while you were giving her all the time to explain clearly.
It seemed clear, though, Stock, that by issuing that statement later in the day, there is an understanding that they have to appeal to the progressive voters, right? Like if they want to actually turn the increase in popular support into seats, they've got to take some of those progressive votes, especially away from the NDP. And you saw the NDP react as well in the same vein. What do you think?
Well, I think your comments and your questions were appropriate, and actually I thought Elizabeth May was pretty clear. She's laid out her position in terms of where she is, and but she's also going, back into the tradition of parliamentary free speech, and I commend her on this part for saying at the end of the day, an individual MP has the right to speak in the House of Commons, unless they're talking about violent overthrow of the government. It's sort of, I think it's revealed a unique fault line in Canadian politics. I think we're the only democracy where you can't actually, or where leaders are saying you can never speak on this. In the UK, as a matter of fact, they have an all-party pro-life caucus, but nobody talks about banning abortion because the law there, as in Canada, says it's legal. Nobody talks about that. In New Zealand, they just elected a very pro-life candidate, but nobody's talking about banning abortion. Australia, in August, they had a huge debate on guidelines, and we keep in mind that most of the democratic Western world that allows abortion does have guidelines. France has clear guidelines, Denmark, and with no guidelines existing in Canada, that's what gives room for elected MPs to want to speak to the issue, not to ban it because they know the Supreme Court has said that's not happening, but to have guidelines. Until you make those clear, these type of things are going to continue to happen. But I do commend Elizabeth May for at least recognizing a very basic right of members of Parliament to raise and speak on issues.
I guess what does it say, though, Evan, that then the party felt it necessary hours later? Because you're right, Stock, she was very clear. She defended her position. She didn't at the time seem to think that it would even be controversial. And it's one that she's even stated previously in the past. So what does it say that the Green Party then felt the need to come out later and say, no, nobody would get past the vetting process?
I think it says that they recognize the risk that abortion will be the niqab of 2019. The radioactive social issue that caused so much grief for the NDP back in 2015. And, if you look at the positions taken by Andrew Scheer and Elizabeth May, they're sort of mirror images of each other, aren't they, right? She's saying, I personally support choice, but I'm not going to impose my view on the caucus. I'm going to allow them to express their views in the other direction. Whereas Andrew Scheer is saying, I'm personally opposed to abortion.
Although he's not that explicit about his personal view, but yeah, he holds one. Yeah.
He has in the past spoken in those terms. But at the same time, I'm not going to impose my view on the Canadian public. I am going to impose, however, a very stern whip on my own caucus to prevent them from talking about it. So
he actually goes further than her in that respect. Yeah.
Much further. Well, it's a much less open position with regards to how you're going to allow your own caucus to speak out. But I mean, we can see the perils, and Tiffany makes a good point that when you're saying I don't remember, that's usually not a good answer in politics. It's a particularly bad answer when the evidence is there, still alive on, and I believe that John Paul Tasker, our colleague, found these past comments. They're still out there on the internet. So saying that I don't remember doesn't even succeed in throwing doubt on whether you held that position. It only succeeds in making it look like you can't remember 2015 very well, which raises a whole bunch of other questions. So, this is an issue that's going to come back to bite candidates who may not have even been nominated yet, right? There are still candidates who we haven't seen the opposition research on them because they haven't yet been confirmed in their posts. But all of the parties are trolling through all of the social media accounts of their rivals, and they're looking for any reference to this.
They sure are.
I think where there's an
comment, go for it, Stock.
I think where there's an opportunity for Andrew Scheer here, because Justin Trudeau will really go after him on respect for a woman's right to choose. And he has the opportunity to come back very quickly and say, we do have a prime minister, first time in history, that has had 4 women walk out on him. Four elected women, 2 in cabinet, one a woman of color, another one First Nations, all saying, I cannot work with this man. So
and you
I
have
think
heard
there's
that
a response
from the Conservatives,
there.
certainly.
Yeah, I think Andrew's going to continue to have to use that.
Yeah, I bet we're in for hearing a bit of that during the campaign.
I think so.
Yes. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.